Hey guys, Ali here. How you doing? This right here is Ortho4XP, and this video and the second part of this video are going to show you how you can use this to create a tile and to create the patch files required for that tile to have some kind of elevation profile when it comes to runways and taxiways at airports and airfields. The first of these videos will be basically just going over how to operate this little piece of software here to create a tile without getting in too deep, just so that you can make your sim look quite nice. Now before we get started, installing this is not as easy as you would think. It is a Python script, I think is what it's called. If you're not familiar with Python, which I am not, it will be a little bit more taxing to get this up and running than you would probably imagine. However, in the description below, I am including a video on a tutorial on how to install and get Ortho4XP running. It is made by the guy who made the program, Oscar Pilote or Pilot. I'm not quite sure how to say his last name, but he knows it better than anybody else, obviously, as he created this thing, and that video will be, as I said, in the description below. Please watch that first if you are having problems getting Ortho4XP to run. It will answer a billion of your questions, and it will get you to the stage that we're at now, which is essentially ready to actually create a tile. So, creating a tile, first of all, we need to find out which one we're going to do. Close this and this. This here is Jersey. Jersey is located south of the mainland United Kingdom, just above France, like just here. There's the UK, this is Jersey. And we are going to be creating a Jersey airport. The reason I'm choosing this as a tutorial airport is because the landmass is quite small. Like the tile itself covers like this area maybe or something. The tile's not that big. It's a lot of water essentially, and it won't take very long to actually render the tile when we come to create the scenery. So for the purposes of time convenience, and obviously when it comes to make the patch file the size of the airport, it makes things a little bit quicker to create than, say, something like a tile in France that has land all over it and will take about 3 hours to download at zoom level 18. So we're going to do Jersey first because it's just quicker. I probably should have just said that, actually, thinking about it. But anyway, what you're going to need before we get anything anywhere near Ortho4XP is the following information. You're going to need to know what your grid reference is, your tile number. So if we find on this map here, now this is a link that I will include down below this below the video in the description below, that will link you to this. This here, you can download tiles from this if you like. They're not particularly amazing quality, but if you're feeling lazy, feel free to just download all of these and put them into your sim. What I use this for is reference for grid numbers. So we're going to be doing 49 north, -3 west. This tile here, as you can see, the number is right there. So basically we go to Ortho 4XP and we put that there. So it was 49 north. Whoa, that was terrible typing there. 49 north, -003 west. And what else we're going to need is we're going to need height map information so that we can give this landmass some, elevation information when we actually come to create our tile. I get this from here, viewfinderspanoramas.org. Again, I will be putting this in the description below as well. It has anywhere where there's landmass, and I don't think there is any exception, but anywhere where there is landmass on Earth, this website has the best or the most highly praised, accurate height map information anywhere on the internet, apparently. So I've been using this. Basically, what happens here is instead of downloading the height map information tile by tile, you kind of download it zone by zone. So like this is roughly where Jersey is here on the map. Sadly, I can't zoom in, which I don't think I can. No, I don't think I can. But you would click on that, and it would bring up a download window. It gives you like, you know, the zip file and stuff. And within that zip file, which I'll show you because I've already downloaded this one, I think. Oh no, actually, no, I haven't downloaded this one. I have I? Oh, let me check. If I have, it will be height maps. M30 I have. Okay, so it will essentially within it have a bunch of height maps for different tiles of the world, which are directly comparative to Xplane tile references. So what we would do is we would look for the one that we're going to do. So North 49, West 003, and I'm going to put it into my extracted folder because we're going to need this later. In fact, I'll put them all in here because I'm going to need these all eventually. But if you just want to do one tile and focus on one tile and not get yourself confused, what you can do is you can just copy the one that you need in here, and these will become useful later on in the process, and I'll show you how. So we have our grid reference, and we have our height information for the tile, which Ortho will use to create elevation profiles of the landmass when it's actually building the tile for you. But there's one other thing that we're going to need. Now, well, we don't necessarily need this. This is more a convenience thing. If you are wanting your photo scenery to have roads and traffic and buildings on it through AutoGen and, you know, the road network and all that kind of stuff, you're going to need OSM data to put in the overlay section of the tile when it's built. Now, there are a number of places where you can get this, but how I do it is I essentially use the HD Mesh version 3 stuff. And basically, anybody who knows how to use this, you basically, like, we'll be using this tile here because Jersey's about here. You basically, I'll be putting this link in the description below as well, but you would go, say, what's that, about a third of the way down the page, and then you find this table. And then you zoom in or zoom out as much as you like, and you find the area that you're working on, click on it, and essentially it downloads the mesh v3 by is it Alpilot X, I think it is. Now within this, I've already downloaded this, so I'll show you. Within this folder, like once you downloaded the folder, you extract it into your custom scenery folder. I'm sure many people know about the V3 stuff and how it's installed already, but I'm going to go through it anyway. You go through, here we go, the V3 folder, EarthNav data, and this is what we downloaded. And we're looking for our, tile, which is this one here, 49 north, negative 003 west. This is the DSF file that holds the mesh information for V3 as well as the transport network information as well, or at least it allows for an overlay layer to be created so that OSM information can be used to position your roads and your houses and stuff like that. I'm not entirely sure how DSF files work, but this file is required for us to have any roads, houses, or anything like that on our tiles. Without this, it's just photo scenery. And I know some people are fine with that, which is why I said it's optional, but I always put this in my tiles, and I'll show you where that gets used later on. So we have all that, and at the moment that's everything we need to create a tile. Now, we'll start from the top. As I said, we need to put in what tile that we're going to create. Okay, so we've already put in the 49 north 003 west, which is where Jersey is. It's also where Guernsey is as well, and there's an airport there, but we're not going to focus on that for this tutorial. I'll be creating it in my own time, but we don't need to do that now. I'm not entirely sure what custom build directory is. I think this is where you can import a mesh from an existing scenery that you have if you do not want to create your own one. I think. I could be completely wrong about that, but I think that's what it's for. I haven't really read the manual on that section at all because I've never really wanted to use it because I don't have any scenery that I want to take a mesh from. Below that, we've got the zoom level and water options. This option here is the thing that probably affects the size, as in like how big your file is once you've created your tile. Essentially, you get to choose your base source, which is where you're getting your maps from. I always use Bing, or I use Google for areas of a map where Bing hasn't got particularly high-res photos. And then I choose my zoom level of 18. Now, 18 is quite clear, it's reasonably sharp, it's quite a big file size. For example, a tile which has all land and no water in it whatsoever, it can take more, but it takes approximately 40 gig for one tile. So that can use up quite a bit of hard drive space. If you're wanting to make that smaller, you can go 17, or a lot of people even just like to fly 16. It's great if you're just doing jets, because it looks okay from up there, but when you come down, it looks a bit dirty. So I like to have consistency, because I also do GA aircraft like VFR flying, and I want it to look good regardless of where I am altitude-wise. So you choose your base zoom level, and I always go, I do all of my tiles entirely in zoom level 18. However, some people will maybe go, okay, well I'm only going to be flying jets, so I only really want my airports to look nice. So I'll go, say, zoom level 17, and then I'll click this button here, which is to choose a custom zoom level. And this thing here is pretty sweet, because what you can do is, we'll go zoom level 13, and we'll preview. So we're choosing the source, so we want to make sure, obviously, we're going to be seeing the map as we're going to be in this, the same map that we're going to be using for our scenery. We'll do a preview zoom level of the biggest possible, because I like to do that, and hit preview, and it will download photos very slowly, so that we can see the tile that we're going to be building from afar. And once that comes up, what we're going to do, or what we can do, is you can create custom zoom level areas so that some parts of your tile, like areas around maybe big cities where you want a lot of detail, or areas around aerodromes where you're probably going to be quite low down and you want to see more than just blurry pixely grass, which just looks like some 5-year-old's done a finger painting and then smudged it with a ruler. You're going to want to see some detail there, and this is where you can make that kind of customization. So we have our base zoom level for this tile set for ZL17, and what you could do if you wanted is maybe create a zone for zoom level 18. There is a significant difference between those two zoom levels. I know it's only one number, but it is a big detail difference, and it does also bump up your file size quite considerably. So let's say, for example, once this loads, we wanted to do even just doing the airport, making sure that the airport itself is high detail, and not even bothering about the surrounding town. You'll see how much file size is added here once you save the zone. So we'll create a zone. We'll find there's no zoom on this, sadly. But there's Guernsey, I think, and this is Jersey. So there's the airport there, right? So let's say, for example, we wanted... okay, so we'll do zoom level 17 for all that, which is already set as our base zoom level in the previous screen. So we'll do a custom zoom level here, and we'll do it for the airport, so that the airport looks awesome. So you hold down Shift, and you click for your first point, and then you just kind of make a shape, holding down Shift for every click. Making sure you don't click and drag, because that can cause problems, but just click, 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 click. Done. So basically all of this will be rendered at, all the Ortho photos will be downloaded at zoom level 17 for all of that area, except from here. It's going to be zoom level 18 here. I don't particularly like using this technique, because as I said, if you do VFR flying and you're at the lower altitudes, you could find yourself seeing the difference. Because of the change in detail, I don't think it's a particularly subtle change, and for me, it kind of annoys me a little bit. So I like to keep all of my tiles all the same zoom level, and I know they're a big file size, but it's going to look gorgeous and consistent. So, and also at least I have a nice kind of consistent standard for my entire scenery. But some people like to do this. Some people like to have, save file space on the parts that they're not going to be particularly low on. If you only fly jets, it's a really good technique to do. And then for the areas that they are going to be quite low and they do want to see the detail, you know, they can just create zoom levels. Like, and you can do zoom levels. So if I were to do, I could do zoom level 19 there if I wanted. Save that zone, right? Apparently it's not going to add any size, which is weird. And then I could do zoom level 18 for, say, this area, for like the approach. You know, so the airport is nice and super crisp. I mean, when you hit zoom level 19, then your file size really bumps up. But zoom level 18 around that as well, you know, it'll look crisp. So you have zoom level 17, same as everything else. And then as you get closer to the airport, oh, it's a bit clearer. And wow, that looks amazing. So if you can imagine your approach and you're wanting to use these custom zoom levels, then yeah. Save the zone, adds about 0.02 gig. Actually, that's not too bad because this island is tiny compared to the rest of the tile. I mean, like, look at this tile. This tile is all water with the exception of Guernsey and... See, it's all water. We're at the top again, going all the way to the right. Yes, it's all water. So this file size isn't going to be particularly huge anyway. But if you can imagine, say, doing a bigger zone on a tile like Paris... You know, the file size will really ramp up, especially if you're using ZL19 zones. But I'm going to abandon this because I'm not going to be using that. I'm going to be doing base zoom level 18 for my entire tile. So we've got our map source and our detail, essentially. Zoom level is the detail of your map, like the resolution of your ortho photos. Then you have your water type, and now you have two options here. And now it should be noted that the water type, as far as I'm aware, only applies to water areas within a landmass, like lakes or ponds or streams or whatever. If it's like the ocean, then that doesn't actually get built into the tile at all. That's just all Xplane. But Ortho controls everything within a landmass. So let's say, for example, oh, I can't think. If anybody lives anywhere near Fife in Kirkcaldy, you have Kinghorn Lake. That kind of thing would be affected by this. So yeah, you get to choose how you want the water to look within a landmass. You can just have Xplane do it all, or you could have just the photo scenery, or you could mix it. And basically the ratio 0.0 would be, let me get this right now. 0.0 would be all photo scenery, and 1 would be all Xplane. What I like to do is I like to go to 0.7. So that I do have a tint of the photo scenery in the Xplane water, but I do have the resolution and the behavior of the Xplane water. So because if you're to do it too low, it kind of looks like If you ever played like you know, early games, like, you know, old games where they're trying to do water and it's clearly just a water texture with like a gif of like foam going back and forward on it, I kind of get that impression with the lower ratio water settings. So I put 0.7 so that I can get a little bit more of a 3D feel to it. It also helps a little bit with frame rate as well, because well, it just does. I'm not entirely sure why. So, we've chosen our map, our resolution, and how we want our water to be. Play around with this as much as you like. It is a very subjective setting. Some people will probably just whack it all into Xplane so it's all nice and consistent. I like to have the colour tints because it accentuates the depth of a lake and the, you know, if there's any kind of specific kind of plant life in the water as well, the colours for that kind of come through. It's really nice. I like to play around with this. So the next step would be to build the vector data, and the vector data is essentially what Ortho4XP obtains from the internet, like your OSM information. So we're going to purge. I always click purge just in case I have a folder already created, because with Ortho4XP, whenever you do anything from build vector data onwards, it actually creates a folder for you. So I'll show you just now how that works. So tools, Ortho4XP, there we go. So this folder here, if I click this, it will start downloading the information from the internet regarding airports and all that kind of stuff. And it uses that OSM information to detect where airports are, and as well as roads and all that kind of stuff. And as you can see here, it's created a folder for this tile, 49-003. So as it's downloading all this information, it'll be dumping it all in here. It would appear that the server's overloaded, so we're going to have to wait for that. Okay, and it's finally done. That took 766 seconds. It must be really busy on the network. You can see all these overloaded or network not available on the site of OpenStreetMap. There must be a lot going on. Or maybe more and more people are getting into doing this, which is wonderful stuff. But anyway, we're back, and the vector data has been completed, which is step 1 of the whole process. As I mentioned before, it creates a folder there, which now has some stuff in it regarding the waterways, riverbanks, all that stuff. All that comes from OpenStreetMap, and determines like where your river, like you know, where all your water settings and stuff are going to be, and it obviously determines where aerodromes and stuff are as well. As Ortho, when it actually creates the tile, it flattens out all of the airports automatically. So obviously it needs to know where the airports are so that it can do that properly. Step 2 is to build the mesh. You have a couple of things here. Now I don't know the ins and outs of all of these, but the curve tolerance, I believe, is the minimum angle required for a gradient change, and essentially it affects how many triangles are in your mesh. More triangles that are in a mesh, the higher resolution your mesh is, so the more accurate topology in your sim. The bigger the curve tolerance, the fewer. You know, obviously, if there's a bigger angle required, like 1, it would take more of a change in the topology for it to be registered by the software and put it into the mesh. So you have a lower resolution mesh, meaning that it's not quite like accurate or as accurate as it is in the real world. What I do is I set it at 0.5, and it looks fantastic. And I get a nice kind of, I think I get a good number of triangles. It's around the, I don't know, just higher than the UHD average per tile. The number of triangles in the UHD scenery, it's a little bit higher than that, but I like it. It looks nice, and when I did Edinburgh and stuff like that, I know Edinburgh quite well from Edinburgh Airport, and it all looked kind of good. So I've decided just to stick with that. Minimum angle is something I always check because I'm always using patch files, but I think this only really affects how patch files are integrated into the mesh. Patch files is something we'll go onto in the second video, which is where I said you essentially change the flattened runways into something that has its own elevation profile. So that's not really important right now, so I'll uncheck it. And then of course the final step is the DEM file. Now this is the height map file that we downloaded before. So basically you're going to go to where you extracted your height map file for this tile. As if you remember rightly, I extracted them all from that folder that we downloaded earlier. That's wrong. Scenery, here we go, height maps extracted. So you're basically looking for the .hgt file, the height file, for the tile that you're doing. We're doing 49-003 with 003, so that's ours. Hit open and it populates that there. So essentially the mesh will now be built for the tile using this height map information. And then we hit step 2 and then it does its thing. Now usually if there's going to be any problems with your mesh or any of the information in your height map file isn't good or is wrong or unreadable, it will tell you in this area here. That's only ever been a problem for me when I started to do patch files, because sometimes you can forget to do little things, or you can put typos in or forget to put in variables, and it will tell you here when there's a problem. It won't tell you what the problem is, so you have to go back into the patch file to figure out what the problem is, but it does tell you that there's a problem. So far so good in this tile here for the entire tile, which is going to cover Guernsey and the Jersey Islands. We're going to have that many triangles, which for the land mass that we're doing is quite a lot, so we should get a lot of detail here. So the next step would be the overlay. Now I don't really do any of these, by the way. I don't do any of these. I leave them all unchecked all the time. But this, I do know what it is. This is the overlay layer, which is essentially what gives you your roads and your buildings and stuff like that on your tile, as opposed to it just being a photograph on the ground. So you remember before we went to this website and we downloaded this, okay? We need to essentially point Ortho into the direction of that folder. So remember, we put that into the custom scenery folder in Xplane, so that's where we need to go next. Custom scenery, oops, that's custom data. Custom scenery folder, and we find the folder that was created, HD Global Scenery. Why it's called that, you'll know if you read the instructions for installing this mesh from that website. But now that's as far as you need to go. You don't need to go in here and, you know, find, you know, because you can't go any further than that. Basically what happens is you point it to the, I guess, the root of where this, where the DSF files are located, which is here in your custom scenery folder. Hit select folder and you build the overlay, and what Ortho does is it looks for the file that it's looking for. So let's see what we got here. It's making a copy of the original DSF file. There we go, so it's found it. It's found it. That's our tile there, so it's found it right there. And you know, it's doing a lot of stuff, seeing what's in that file, and creating a DSF file into what's going to be used for our tile. Now you'll find here it's created in a new folder. So you have, for this tile, you have the mesh, and then you have your overlays folder. Your overlays folder will include all the DSF files you do, and I'll show you why that's an important thing to remember later on. But yeah, it will create a second folder. If you don't want to do overlays and you just want to have photos, that's fine. That folder won't be there because you won't be pressing that button. But just to make sure that that does get created when you press that button, otherwise it hasn't worked properly. Also, if this takes only maybe 2 or 3 seconds and you have a large landmass, you know it hasn't worked. So you need to find out why it hasn't worked. It's usually down to the fact that you probably don't have the right tile information in the HDV3 folder. That's usually what my problem is anyway. So we've built the overlay, which is going to give us our roads and our buildings and all that wonderful stuff to add depth and richness to our scenery. The next part, I just leave these the way they, oh crap, I just leave these the way they are. Verbose and clean temp files are ticked, and that is unticked. And now we have the masks. Now the masks are really quite cool, because essentially what it does is, if we change this to, can I put that onto, yeah. Basically what it does is it takes information from the OSM data, like coastlines and stuff like that, and it finds where the coasts are, and it does a transition to the Xplane water. So you have a kind of a fade. Like, you see how that fades into the, well, obviously there's no ocean there, but you see how you can see under the water there on the coastline? It gives you that kind of thing. Now the problem is, with Bing anyway, and with Google, not all of their ortho photos actually allow this to happen. Sometimes, like this area here that's blank, comes right up to the coastline, and so all you have is a white square in some parts of the coastline if your mask is too big. But essentially what you're wanting to do here is think of a number. I don't know what the unit is. Mask width, I don't know what the unit of measurement is, but I always set mine to 4. But the bigger the number, the bigger the mask, so the bigger the transition. So from the coastline to the water is a bigger amount of space as it blends together. The smaller the number, it's a smaller amount of space, so the transition is quicker. I like to have the shorter one because I can keep that consistent throughout the entire map regardless of whether or not there's any problems with the edges of the ortho photos. So once you've set your mask, I set mine to 4, you can set yours to whatever you want. You know, play around with it. Render a tile with mask 4, then render another one with 6, 8, you know, all the way up to 16 if you wanted to. And then what you do is you press build mask, and it will build you your mask. And this takes, I don't know, about a minute. It shouldn't take too long. But this is the kind of thing, like if anybody's familiar with P3D, when you're coming up to a landmass, like say flying from the Netherlands to Edinburgh. So you take off from the Netherlands, you're flying over the water, and then you find Britain, and you look down, and it's like it's water, land, and then maybe there's like a texture for sand or something. But there's no transition there. This is what provides that transition, and this is also why you need to have GIMP and Image Magic installed as well. But you will have done that through the installation video from Oscar that I linked down below the stream. Sorry, down below this video. So this mask is done without any problems. 30 seconds that took, and now we're ready to create a file. Create the whole tile. Basically all we do now, step 3, is build the tile, and what that is going to do is it's going to download the ortho photos from the internet, from Bing, and it's going to pair them up with the mesh information that we have. It will convert everything into DDS files, which if I'm not mistaken, and I probably am because I don't know everything about this, they're the things that make up the mesh for your sim. So this can take some time. The more, obviously, the higher detail your zoom level, like the higher your zoom level, the bigger the photos are going to be as far as the size of them, data wise. So they'll take longer to download. And of course, the more landmass that you have within a tile, it will take longer to download as well, because there's more photos to download and convert. With this, as I said, the reason I chose Jersey, I mean, it's just basically this and this in the tile. That's it. And these little island areas. You know, and the rest of it's all water. So it just made the most sense to show you this one because it's nice and quick to get out of the way. So I'll come right back to you once this is finished creating itself. And then what we'll do is we'll put it into the sim. And we will see how gorgeous it looks. Okay guys, that is the process finished. It took less than 10 minutes, which is good. I wish all tiles were like that, but sometimes they are just not. And we've got now 2 folders here. So this of course contains the information and all the terrain, the textures, all the masks for the coastline. That's essentially what we're going to be putting onto our sim. That stuff right there. And we've got the EarthNav data, which is the DSF file, which is going to give us our roads and buildings and everything. So we have everything. What we want to do now is obviously put them into the sim. And as always with Xplane, what you do is you put everything into your custom sceneries folder. So I usually just cut it. Some people just copy it. I tend not to do that, because otherwise if I have too many folders queued up in the ortho folder, I get confused. Xplane, custom scenery, and as you can see here, I've got a number of tiles made already. I also have 1 overlays folder. And this is because all of the EarthNav data overlays go into the same place for all of your tiles. There's only 1 folder required. So basically, if you already if this is your first tile, just copy and paste it. If it's your second tile or 5th or 10th tile, you'll find that you'll just need to copy over, but you won't get any additional overlay folders because it will just be added to the one that's already there. So that's that done. Now what we need to do is open up Xplane and make sure that all worked. Okay, so I'm going to get Jersey here, EGJJ, and I'm going to get myself into my airfoil labs and fly. Well, we're not going to fly, but we're going to have a look. We'll fly around with the camera. That's what I always like to do, just to check things out. Okay guys, so we are in. It is worth noting at this point that when you start to include these sceneries into your sim, especially ones that have a lot of landmass and are big file sizes, it does affect the loading of your sim, and I have about 10 of them. It has definitely increased the loading time to a good 4 or 5 times normal. So we are in Jersey, and the photo scenery is in. The scenery I'm using for the airport is scenery I got off of the Xplane forums. I forget who made it. I can't remember, I'm really sorry, but it's really nice. It's got a populated car park, and the buildings are quite good too. I I myself, whenever I get stuff off the Xplane forums, I immediately remove the static aircraft through the overlay editor for Xplane, because if you're flying online, there's nothing more annoying than seeing somebody land and then park into a static aircraft. It really bugs the crap out of me. But for those who fly offline, this is a nice set of scenery, and you can get it easily by going onto the Xplane forums and just typing into the search thing Echo Golf Juliet Juliet for Jersey, and it applies to the majority of airports that I have scenery for. I don't have any payware scenery in my Xplane sim at the moment. So this is us, my Airfoil Labs 172, looking awesome, and this is Jersey. Like, we're probably about, I don't know, maybe 500 feet in the air right now, maybe a little bit more, and it looks nice, you know, like there's detail on the ground. There are obviously some areas that should have trees that do not have trees. I'm not entirely sure why that is. Let me just check my settings. Rendering options. Trees. I'm a tree hugger, so they are there. I'm not entirely sure why some of them wouldn't pop up. I'm sure there's a reason. It might actually have something to do with the asset pack that I'm using, because it looks like the asset pack creator has basically put buildings and bushes and stuff in particular places, but you can see as we move out, well, maybe not. There doesn't appear to be a lot of OSM information for the buildings here either. Some areas of the world you'll find don't have all the data required for buildings, which is annoying. If I'm not understanding that right, then somebody please correct me, because if there's a way that I can get buildings on every single one of these, I want to do it. But yeah, like we are, again, 1,000 feet, maybe around 1,000 feet in the air, and that's the detail you get from the photo scenery, and it looks really nice. I'm not sure why I'm not getting buildings more than I am. That is kind of annoying. I need to work out why that is. If anybody who's watching this knows why that is, please tell me. It's been bugging me for a while, especially in areas like Aberdeen and Inverness and stuff. You just have like a bunch of photo areas, but not really many houses. It is a pain. But yeah, that is the tile created for the Isle, for Jersey and for Guernsey, because it's also in the same tile. But I want you to have a look at something real quick. Obviously we have the road network, which is, I actually use the W2XP network and OSM downloads for my road network. The reason why I do the overlay thing to the HD Mesh version 3 is because it helps with things like power lines and windmills and things that are not in W2XP's stuff. So, yeah. But yeah, as you can see, excuse me, the runway and the taxiway for the most part is a little bit off here. For the most part does line up pretty much bang on. Sometimes that's not the case. Some of the runways in Xplane are slightly out of line. So you need to correct that with the World Editor or WED or whatever it is. But you'll notice here now that this runway is completely flat. Now I don't know Jersey runway. I need to look this up myself. But this is what I'm talking about. This aerodrome has been completely flattened by when the mesh was created, and the next video, part 2 of this tutorial, will take us through how we can create a patch file to get a more realistic, real-world elevation profile for aerodromes. I think it's quite important. Like, one of the benefits of Xplane is that you don't have to have flat runways as opposed to FSX and P3D. I know it's one of the things that I am most pumped about. And I know also it's one of the things that when I've flown on Xplane and I've come to land, and then I go and land on P3D, it just seems so much easier. So, you know, that's not always really what it's supposed to be like. But the scenery, I mean, at this, like, I don't know how far off the ground are we? Not very far. I'd say 500 feet tops. And, you know, it looks this good at zoom level 18. And it does look good. Shame there's not more buildings. Zoom level 17 is, you know, it's a lesser quality. And, of course, zoom level 16 is a lesser quality. But you guys can play about with that and troubleshoot, you know, just trial and error. Learn what your standards are for this and then make your own tiles. But as you can see here, you know, because this aerodrome has been completely flattened, we have a very, very sudden slope here, which I do not believe is supposed to be there. So what I'll do is, I'm pretty sure that's everything I need to tell you. Oh yes, the masks. So remember how we made the masks, right? This is what I'm talking about, the transition from shoreline to water, like as in the ortho photo to the water. So the OSM information that we get in stage 1 of the tile making process, that we download all those nodes and everything, it gives us information like where the aerodromes are. It gives us information for coastlines as well, and this is where Ortho4XP gets the information that it needs to be able to do these masks in the correct place. So yeah, it's a nice, and especially from a higher altitude, it's really very, it looks really good. The coast looks really nice. Now, as I said, I like to put mine, some people like to put them like a mask width of 8. I find sometimes with the ortho photos having like the odd dead area right on the edge of the landmass, that kind of leaves little white squares, and I don't like that, so I like to limit that as much as possible, but it still looks absolutely awesome. Got a little island with a lighthouse there. And that is Jersey, guys, and that is the airport with the asset pack from the Xplane forums. I might actually link that into the bottom of this video so you can get the same one if you want. But yeah, what I'll do now is I'll leave you to practice this. If you have any questions, I will link the official forum post on the Xplane forums for the Ortho4XP, and you can have a look through that. If you can't find your answer, you know, leave a comment or whatever, and I'll try and answer it, but there's no guarantee that I'll be able to. But yeah, it looks good, huh? I just need to find a way to find out whether it's the OSM data or if it's the like the scenery that I'm making that's causing so many empty houses to be there, because I wouldn't mind. Yeah, again, buildings should be here, and I'd like to know what it is I might be doing wrong that's causing them not to be. But that's it from me. I hope this tutorial was useful in getting yourself started in creating your own ortho scenery for your Xplane sim. Part 2 will be out sometime soon. I'm going to be recording it pretty soon anyway. And that will go over how to use JOSM for creating patch files and how to integrate patch files into the whole tile building process. So guys, for this video that's it from me. If you find it at all enjoyable, helpful or useful in any way, feel free to like it. And if you want to see more from me in the future, feel free to hit the subscribe button so that YouTube can spam you every single time I post a video. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your days, and I will be back here again very, very soon. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.